All right. Algernon's October with the check-in on Hip Hop United. Well, Beyonce isn't the only diva in Atlanta this weekend, and that's a good thing. We have a powerful leader of women hanging out with us today. A fierce competitor that's known for her high standards and even higher basketball IQ with an incredible sense of style. We're going to get into that. She's committed to winning and shaping lives on and off the court. Please welcome the head coach of Alabama A&M's women basketball team, Bulldogs in the house, Coach Dawn Thornton. How you doing, Diva?
What's up? What's up? What's up? How you doing?
I am good. I'm even better now that you are here, giving out all that great energy. The style is styling. Everything is happening. I'm happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
How you feeling? Now, I think we were talking off camera. You said you fresh off of Essence Fest.
Fresh off of Essence. Essence was wonderful. That was actually my first time going.
Okay.
And so just kind of being around a bunch of dope black people and, women pouring into each other, just seeing everybody doing their thing. It was a beautiful thing.
That's what I'm talking about. Well, nothing but Bulldog energy in the building right now. Tell me why you decided to go to Alabama and how you're going to be building a winning culture there.
I've been coaching basketball for 18 years, and so I felt like I was at a point in my career where I wanted something new, something interesting, something challenging. I was coming out of University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff, which is a very rural town, being in Arkansas right outside of Little Rock. I wanted a little city life, and so I thought that would be great for my son, putting him in a space like Huntsville, which is phenomenal. It's growing, it's thriving, and I felt like everything was just calling me to Huntsville. It's been beautiful since I've been here too.
That's what's up. Now, as a successful player, what inspired you to want to go into coaching, and what about that is rewarding to you?
In all honesty, I knew I wanted to coach when I was in the 7th grade. I couldn't see myself doing anything else. Just knowing that you have a woman that's teaching you the game of basketball, but also teaching you the game of life and teaching you skills on how to survive and what it's like being a woman and what it's like handling adversity and challenges and all of those different things. And I remember how that impacted me as a young girl. And I wanted to be able to have that same type of impact and influence on young women as well. And so that was something that I craved for. And it was crazy because as a basketball player, most times you're processing things as a player. But for me, a lot of times I was like trying to think like my coach. And then in things that I didn't agree with it, as opposed to like, being resistant, I was like, okay, if I'm ever in that situation, I'm going to do something different. And this is what I would do different. And so that's kind of what's been the driving force for me. And I would say that it's been very rewarding.
That's what's up. So I'm assuming we got ballers that are going to be tapping in and listening to this as well. So what does the day in the life of a successful basketball player look like? Like, walk us through, the steps of what should be done to achieve, the best results on the court.
I think in anything that you do in life, it's going to require sacrifice and commitment. You got to be committed to whatever it is that you are signing up for, whatever it is that you're agreeing to, whatever it is that you're committing to, and whatever you're dedicated to. And there's a grind and a process that you're going to have to go through. I know a lot of our freshmen that come in, they don't really know what to expect, coming in off of high adrenaline, just really and truly want to be able to make a name for themselves. But there are a lot of things that goes along with being a student athlete, managing classes and managing if they want to have a job and study hall and weights and conditioning, and it's so much, and it's really very challenging. And I think that that's kind of reason, I don't want to go too deep, but that's the reason why I think like mental health is such a big thing now for our student athletes, because they're struggling at times finding that balance. And so, but those who understand it, those who get it, they thrive quite well.
Okay, absolutely. That's good. And we'll talk a little bit more about mental health in a moment. Now, obviously, whenever you walk in the room, we can see and feel all the pressure. Where did you get your amazing sense of style from, Queen?
Growing up, I was actually bullied, and I was ashamed of my height, and I think that I've always been put into a box. I believe when I first started coaching, there were some requirements that administration told me that I could not do with the way that I dressed on the sideline. And it was never anything that was revealing or provocative, but it was just kind of what you're showing and what you're displaying. Being a tall woman, a curvy woman, a woman of my stature, I can't wear what everybody else wears, or can I? And at some point I woke up and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to be me, and I'm not going to try to confine to anyone else, because I know that what I do, it's a part of who I am, and as a woman, as a leader, as a mother, as a coach. And I want other young women, if I'm standing in front of them and telling them you got to be yourself, and and walk in a room and hold your head high, what do I look like, being that person, and I'm trying to live and do things the way somebody else wants me to do it. So I learned to just kind of express myself through my style and how I feel, and it exudes confidence of anybody that I walk into the room with, and I'm thankful for that.
I definitely encouraging people to walk in rooms being your full self, and of course, while you're in there, take up space.
Absolutely.
I love it. Now, the viewership and the attendance for women's basketball is at an all-time high right now. What do you think is kind of driving this, and where do you see the league kind of evolving to in the next 5 years or so?
I think because now women are able to step up to the table and have a voice. I think a few years ago, when Angel Reese was at LSU, probably I believe her sophomore year, LSU went to the NCAA tournament, and they were talking about how, they didn't get the same type of treatment that the men's teams were getting. They had weight rooms, they had barbershops, they had all of these different resources available for the male basketball players in the NCAA tournament. And the girls now you can pull your phone out and record anything that you want to show somebody. And they looking like, they just giving us granola bars, and they got catered meals, and they put us in this little space and just put some free weights up, and the men have a full weight room. And I think that now with women's sports, now it's like, okay, hey, we want a seat at the table. We're here, we're working hard, we're training, but now you know what, we're gonna do it our way, because in the past, the way that it's been in the past is like, you just want us to just kind of get what's left, or, y'all got y'all time, this is your time. But now it's like, you know what? No, we here and we ready, and we're going to make some noise too.
That's what's up. Now, how do you feel, you brought her up there, how do you feel about the perceived animosity between Caitlin Clark and Andrew Reese? Do you think it's good for the game? Like, what do you think about that?
I mean, I think it's like Biggie and Pac, right?
Okay.
Any type of control, type of beef environment that's gonna get the views. As you see, and as you're able to see the way things are transitioning now with social media, you can play off of anything now. And I mean, if it's gonna get the views, it's gonna get the views. But I think you have two ultra competitive athletes that don't have animosity to each other, but I think that they're the best. I think each of them think that they're the best of who they are in their game on that floor. And I mean, it's no different. You remember Michael Jordan back in 97, and how he was Allen Iverson and all those who thought that they were the best, they weren't backing down to anybody. So I like the way that the level of competition is when both of them stand on the floor together. I love that.
Yeah, I like it myself. It makes for good basketball. Now, swinging it back to you, Queen, how do you balance the demands of being a head coach and, of course, your family life while still trying to make time for yourself?
I think that you have to have a good, strong, solid support system. My staff, my family, they do a really good job of surrounding me with support and love. And I think that's very important, because I also have to allow my son to understand what I do as well, because there's a lot of things that I end up missing, with him also. But he gets it and he understands it, because, now, we're talking about training as a professional athlete and what that looks like. And because when I'm, training our girls, we have kids that want to play overseas. We have kids that want to go to the WNBA. So my son is understanding sacrifice, and again, that word dedication and commitment. So he's getting that. So just being able to have a village around you, it makes it a little less stressful for you, I would say.
Got you. Well, tell us about the Dawn that exists outside of the court. Like, how would you describe your social, or I should say, how would your social or a personal circle describe you?
I'm from Jackson, Mississippi, and
Hey.
I'm a country girl through and through, and I never meet a stranger. I believe in cultivating relationships and trying to find the good in everybody and every person that I meet. And, I say that all the time. That could be like a strength and a weakness, because I'm always give somebody a chance to come into my space, because you never know who you're going to meet along the way. God places people in your lives at a certain time. But my friends will tell you that I'm loyal. I bring everybody together. That's the like the athlete in me. I've integrated all of my friends as I have journeyed and carried on along the way from state to state to state, and it just kind of continues to get bigger. And I love that because I believe that on this earth we don't have a long time here, and we got to be happy, and we got to be able to celebrate each other, uplift each other, and be able to come together and just fellowship and reflect and thank God for the opportunities that we've had to share with each other also.
Yeah, definitely treasuring people. And speaking of people, how do you prepare your players for life outside of basketball?
You know, it's everything. It's the way that I'll give you a perfect example. You know, we have something called Leadership School, and basically this was created by myself and my staff, and we brought different people in around the community to help teach and nurture and educate our young women, from healthcare with the OBGYN, from we have training with police in how you're dealing with police officers and knowing your rights, and banking and finance. We have ministers to come in to talk to them and to pray with them, and we have mental health specialists come in. We even have someone come in to talk to them about etiquette. So we really and truly want to make sure that, you know, it's more than just basketball. I remember playing college basketball, and all I did was go to practice every single day and playing a game. But, you know, what about me as a young woman, and as I'm going into adulthood, and what does that look like? And so that's something that I wanted to be able to frame with all of my young women, so they would understand what life would look like outside of basketball. Because again, that word commitment and dedication, they've committed so much of their time and their life to basketball.
Yeah, gotcha. How do you stay inspired? Like, you know, do you talk to other prominent coaches and trade recipes to success, things like that as well? How do you kind of keep yourself up?
You know, I'm a very optimistic person, for one. So, you know, I look at everything in life as not a failure. Everything is a success. You can look at it from a lesson that you should have learned out of it, out of the disappointment or the setbacks. But I think that God allows everything to happen for a reason. I do have very great, you know, a great mentorship circle with a lot of great coaches that's in my heart, dear to my heart. My mentor is Coach Yo from Ole Miss University, and so the University of Mississippi. Right, yeah, University of Mississippi. See, when you're from Jackson, you just know Jackson State, Alcorn, Mississippi Valley. So yeah, she's the head women's basketball coach at Ole Miss, and so we're very, very close, and we share a lot of stories, and she kind of helps me get through things and navigate through things as a coach.
Got it. Now, how do you balance, you know, pushing players to be their best, as well as supporting them in terms of their mental and emotional health? We talked about that earlier.
You know, I think as a coach, you have to push and challenge your players to put them in situations to where you would see how they will respond to challenges, responding to adversity, because the game of basketball is a game of runs, which means you're going to be up some, you'll be down some. So really and truly putting them in those situations, you know, it's like you go to study hall, you got 8 hours that you're supposed to go to, you make 7, you have to run, you get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, you run football stadiums, you know. Well, what does that carry over, and how does that carry over for life? You're not going to show up for work late. You're not gonna miss your job. You miss your job, you miss out and don't come to work, no call, no show, you don't have a job. So, you know, just putting them in those situations or watching them navigate through the responsibilities that they are obligated to as a student athlete. So really and truly just pushing them, celebrating them also as they overcome those obstacles, and how they handle those obstacles, in my opinion, is what's most important to me, because that's when they're most vulnerable, so you can shape and mold them as they understand, look, congratulations, you got through that. I'm proud of you. You know, you were able to do that.
Got you. And just wrapping you up, as I'm having such a good time with you as well. If we were just, well, I guess I should say, how do you want the players that you have coached to remember you?
You know, I was actually just asked that question last week, and that was the first time that someone has asked me that question. So you being the second time, it's like, it's an emotional thing for me, because I guess, you know, coaching 18 years, you go back and look at it, I consider myself a young woman, right?
Absolutely.
You know, so I'm not like thinking that I'm old, and I know what I thought about my coaches as I see my coaches in their 60s, you know, but now me being 42 years old and hearing that question, it's like I got time now to sit back, to reflect, to think about, like, what would my players say about me, and how would they remember me, and the impact that I had on their lives. And they would say that she inspired me, and she never gave up on me, and she was going to always see the good in a person and give you a second and third chance. And, she'll always just have your back no matter what. I was there when one of my players, she was pregnant, Shamaya Brooks, and I could talk about Shamaya. Her and I are very close, and she got pregnant on me. Golly, that was my first player that got pregnant on me. But instead of me being upset about that, she got put on bed rest, and I stayed in the hospital with her 3 times a week. I cooked for her 3 times a week. I laid in the hospital bed with her as she got through it because her parents live in West Point, Georgia, so they couldn't get to her. And so just being there, I'm going to always just show up. That's one thing. If you want to know what that's it. That's what they're going to say. They're going to say that she's going to show up, and I'm going to always show up.
On that note, that makes the most sense, and you've been showing up for years, and we appreciate you coming through to the check-in to talk about your journey, your legacy, and I hope that you have a great season that ends with some championship hardware. In terms of that, we're going to speak that into existence.
Manifest, that's what I need.
That's what we're going to do. Well, please tell everyone where they can find you, and of course, if you have any interesting projects outside of basketball coming up, let us know about that as well.
Well, first off, I appreciate y'all. Thank you so much for having me here, but those who are listening, you can follow me at Dawn the Diva Coach on Instagram and on X. So y'all make sure y'all shout your girl out, and I just appreciate it. And upcoming projects, we have a basketball camp. I have a basketball camp that I'm putting on August the 3rd in Huntsville, Alabama. And what makes this so special, it's a free basketball camp that was started from my foundation post-COVID. I realized right after COVID, a lot of parents couldn't afford for their kids to go to basketball camp. And so what I wanted to do was give them an opportunity with some relief financially. So we do a back-to-school drive. We're doing free haircuts. I got 6 barbers that's committed that's going to be chopping it up, get some temp phase up, on the hill. So we're going to be getting that going. And we're going to play some basketball. So I'm hoping that we can see at least 150 kids in the building. We've had as many as 200. And so as I am, getting adjusted to Huntsville, I hope that those who are listening, if you're attached to anybody in Huntsville or anywhere close, we'd love to be able to have you. And you'll be able to find all of those details on my socials.
I love it. Continuing to give back and using basketball as a platform to make a difference and make a change. We love it. Well, we appreciate you coming through. We can't wait to have you back after we talk about them rings and things you're going to put on the table. For everybody else, make sure you subscribe to Hip Hop United on the iHeart app. Select Hip Hop United. Put us in the presets. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Coach, you've officially been checked in. Let's go.
Let's go.